An entitled Karen cut me off, so I bought her $60 lunch and fed it to stray teenagers. I was leaning against the steaming hood of my stalled sedan, casually handing out $60 worth of premium, freshly fried chicken strips to a group of skateboarding teenagers while a woman in a pristine white luxury SUV screamed so hard a purple vein threatened to rupture through her forehead. She was completely boxed inside a concrete drive-thru tunnel with 15 irate drivers laying on their horns behind her, and I was the one holding the absolute, legally binding keys to her total psychological destruction. The exhaust fumes were thick enough to chew, baking into the asphalt under the brutal Saturday afternoon sun. It was exactly 1:15 p.m., the absolute peak of the weekend rush at the city's most notorious chicken franchise. If you've ever worked retail or fast food, you know the exact energy of a Saturday rush. The air vibrates with a chaotic mix of hunger, impatience, and the desperate human desire to just get the food and go home. This specific location was a goldmine for the company, but a geographical nightmare for the customers. Built on a bizarrely shaped, undersized lot, the drive-thru lane wrapped tightly around the back of the building, flanked on one side by the brick wall of the restaurant and on the other by a 6-foot-high, unforgiving concrete retaining wall. It was a literal trench. Once you committed to the drive-thru, you were in the chute. There was no bailing out, no pulling to the side, and absolutely no way to reverse once the line filled in behind you. Because of the sheer volume of traffic this place pulled in, they utilized a dual-lane ordering system. 2 lanes split off from the main entrance, curving around the perimeter before funneling down into a single, highly contested choke point just before the speaker boxes. It's a standard zipper merge. Everyone with a functioning brain and a shred of societal decency knows how the zipper merge works. The car in the left lane goes, then the car in the right lane goes, then the left, then the right. It is the unspoken social contract that separates civilized society from a post-apocalyptic wasteland where we all fight over scraps of meat in the dirt. I was in the right lane, patiently sweating it out in my 10-year-old sedan. The AC was barely fighting off the overwhelming heat, and the radio was softly playing in the background as I inched forward. I was third in a massive, 20-car queue that spilled out into the main roadway. I watched the heavy, black pickup truck in the left lane roll forward, taking his rightful turn in the chute. It was my turn next. I took my foot off the brake, allowing my car to slowly drift into the gap. That is when the front grille of an $80,000, blindingly white imported luxury SUV suddenly dominated my driver's side mirror. I felt the heat rising in my neck and my vision went blurry with a sudden spike of adrenaline. The driver of the SUV, a woman gripping her steering wheel with manic intensity, had decided the zipper merge was a suggestion for the peasantry, not a rule for her. She didn't just edge forward, she aggressively gunned her engine. The massive V8 roared, completely drowning out my radio, as she violently swerved her heavy vehicle directly into my lane. The heavy chrome bumper of her tank missed my front quarter panel by an absolute fraction of an inch. I had to slam my foot down on the brake pedal so hard my shin ached, throwing my chest violently against the seatbelt to avoid the collision. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I looked over, fully expecting an apologetic wave. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe she hadn't seen me. Instead, I looked through her completely untinted passenger window and saw her glaring at me behind a pair of oversized, designer sunglasses. She had perfectly coiffed hair, layers of heavy gold jewelry around her neck, and an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. She didn't wave. She didn't mouth the word sorry. She simply rolled her eyes, scoffed visibly, and pulled her massive SUV so tight to the rear bumper of the pickup truck in front of us that a sheet of paper couldn't have passed between them. She had forced her way in, entirely gridlocking the merge point, making it impossible for me or anyone else in my lane to move forward without causing a massive accident. I sat there, gripping my steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to take deep, measured breaths. I could taste the metallic tang of pure frustration in my mouth. I watched her pull up to the speaker box, leaning out of her window. I rolled mine down just enough to hear the exchange. "I need 3 of the spicy deluxe combos," she barked into the crackling intercom, her voice piercing the heavy afternoon air. "And I want absolutely no pickles on any of them. If there is a single pickle on my sandwiches, I will bring them back and demand a refund for the entire order. Do you understand me? And give me a large sweet tea with exactly 4 ice cubes. Not crushed, cubed." The exhausted teenager on the other end of the speaker managed a faint, polite confirmation. The total rang up on the digital display board outside, $60.14. As she put her window up, she casually glanced in her rearview mirror, locked eyes with me, and slowly, deliberately raised her hand through her open sunroof to flip me the middle finger. The absolute sheer audacity of the gesture hit me like a physical blow. The anger that had been simmering in my chest crystallized into a cold, hyper-focused clarity. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was calculating. I am a regular at this specific franchise. I come here every Tuesday and Saturday. I know the manager, Dave, by name. I know the shift leads. Most importantly, I know exactly how their high-volume drive-thru system operates. During a Saturday rush with a 20-car backup, the chaotic reality the inside that kitchen is a blur of grease, shouting, and frantically printed tickets. The window workers do not care what you look like. They do not care what car you are driving. They operate strictly on a sequence of numerical orders. Car 1 gets order 1. Car 2 gets order 2. I finally pulled up to the speaker, quickly ordered a simple combo meal for myself, and pulled forward into the concrete chute. The high walls of the retaining structure completely boxed us in. The white SUV was trapped in front of me, waiting for the line to move toward the payment window, and behind me, an endless snake of cars was trapped by the sheer volume of the lunchtime rush. When the white SUV finally reached the first window, the payment booth, I watched the woman aggressively shove her credit card at the cashier without making eye contact. The transaction took less than 20 seconds. She snatched her card back and rolled forward to the final pickup window. Now, it was my turn at the payment booth. I pulled up and looked at the cashier. It was Marcus, a college kid who always looked like he was fighting for his life during the weekend shifts. His apron was stained with flour and his forehead was glistening with sweat. "Hey man, crazy out there today," Marcus said, wiping his brow with the back of his gloved hand. "You have no idea, Marcus," I replied, forcing a warm, genuine smile. I pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Listen, I want to do something nice today. The lady in the white SUV right in front of me? She's my boss. We just finished a massive project at work, and I'm picking up her tab as a surprise to say thank you. Can I pay for her $60 order along with mine? I'll need both receipts, of course, so I can expense it later." Marcus blinked, wiping his forehead again, completely unsuspecting. "Oh, wow. Yeah, dude, that's incredibly generous of you. People have been screaming at us all day, so it's nice to see some kindness. Happy to spread some positivity," I lied smoothly, the adrenaline making my fingertips tingle. Marcus processed the transaction, the register chiming cheerfully. He handed me my change, and more importantly, he handed me the two distinct, itemized receipts. I folded them neatly, slipping them into the breast pocket of my shirt like they were winning lottery tickets. Wait, it gets worse. Legally and systematically, by the absolute laws of commerce and retail procedure, I now completely owned all of the food in the queue. The moment that register drawer slammed shut and those receipts touched my hand, her spicy deluxe combos, her perfectly measured sweet tea, and her absolute lack of pickles became my sole, undisputed property. I rolled forward as she was parked at the second window. I watched the scene unfold through my windshield like a perfectly directed movie. The pickup window slid open. A different worker, a young woman balancing two massive, heavy brown paper bags overflowing with food, leaned out. The Karen in the white SUV reached her manicured hand out, fully expecting to grab the handles. Instead, the worker smiled politely, shook her head, and pulled the bags back inside. Even through the glass of my car, I could see the woman's mouth drop open in confusion. I rolled my window down just a crack to catch the audio. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the worker explained, projecting her voice over the rumble of the engine. "Your order has actually already been completely paid for and collected by the gentleman in the car right behind you. He said he was covering it. You're good to go. Have a wonderful day." The worker promptly slid the heavy glass window shut and locked it. The woman in the SUV froze. Her brain completely short-circuited. She stared at the closed window, then slowly craned her neck to look in her side mirror directly at me. I offered her a wide, cheerful wave. The exact kind of wave you give a friend you haven't seen in years. I watched the realization wash over her features. The confusion melted into a furious, venomous rage. She slammed her hand against her steering wheel, her mouth forming words I couldn't hear but could definitely decipher. She slammed her car into drive and hit the gas, clearly intending to speed out into the main parking lot, circle around, and aggressively confront me at the exit. The heavy SUV roared as she tore away from the window, tires chirping loudly against the greasy pavement. That's when the real bombshell dropped. I didn't stay at the window. I didn't grab my food and try to speed away to escape her wrath. Instead, I drove up to the pickup window, cheerfully accepted the two massive, heavy bags of her premium chicken and my single combo meal, and thanked the confused staff. Then, I put my car in drive, and I rolled forward exactly 10 feet. I pulled just far enough ahead to completely clear the pickup window, allowing the car behind me to access the staff, but I deliberately stopped directly inside the absolute narrowest part of the exit lane. To my left was the solid brick wall of the restaurant's loading dock. To my right was the 6-foot-high, unforgiving concrete retaining wall. There was barely enough room to open a car door, let alone maneuver a vehicle around mine. I slammed the gearshift into park. I reached down and pulled the hood release lever. The heavy metal latch popped with a satisfying, echoing clunk. I took a deep breath, opened my door, and stepped out into the sweltering heat. I wiped a completely fake bead of sweat from my forehead, adopting the universally distressed posture of a man whose vehicle has tragically and inexplicably broken down at the worst possible moment. The woman in the white SUV had slammed on her brakes the moment she realized I wasn't following her out into the open lot. She threw her heavy vehicle into reverse, the white backup lights blinding me, and forcefully backed up until her rear bumper was merely inches from the front of my sedan. She aggressively threw open her door, nearly slamming it into the concrete retaining wall, and marched toward me. Her face was flushed a violent, mottled red. "You absolute sociopathic freak," she screamed, her voice echoing shrilly off the concrete walls of the chute. "What is wrong with you? Move your piece of junk out of my way right now." "I'd love to," I whispered, leaning in close, my voice low and calm, projecting an eerie serenity that only infuriated her more. "But my engine just suddenly died. It's making a terrible ticking noise. It's an absolute tragedy. I wouldn't want to risk starting it and causing a catastrophic engine failure right here in the drive-thru." "You thief! You stole my food. I paid for that. Give me my bags right now before I call the cops and have you arrested for grand larceny," she shrieked, spit flying from her perfectly lined lips, her hands frantically reaching for the open window of my car where the brown bags rested on the passenger seat. I calmly reached into my breast pocket, pulled out the 2 crisp, white receipts, and held them up in the sunlight directly in front of her face. "I didn't steal a single fry," I said, my voice steady and completely devoid of emotion. "I purchased this food. The transaction was perfectly legal. I hold the receipts. This chicken is my legally owned property. You tried to force your way into a line, you almost caused a collision, and then you flipped me off. So, I bought your lunch." She stared at the receipts, her mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. She looked from the paper, to my face, to the smoking hot hood of my stalled car. "You can't do that," she sputtered, her voice cracking into a shrill, hysterical pitch. "You cannot just buy someone else's order. Give it to me. It's mine," I reiterated, tucking the receipts safely back into my pocket. "And honestly, I'm not really a fan of the spicy deluxe. I just wanted my combo." Just then, the universe decided to deliver the perfect punchline. Walking down the adjacent public sidewalk, completely oblivious to the intense, dramatic standoff occurring in the drive-thru trench, was a group of 4 teenage boys. They were wearing baggy cargo shorts, oversized graphic tees, and carrying beat-up skateboards covered in scraped grip tape. They looked sweaty, tired, and exactly like the kind of kids who possess a bottomless pit for a stomach. "Hey guys," I called out loudly, turning my back entirely on the furious woman. The kids stopped, looking over the low section of the retaining wall. Hey man, what's up?" the tallest one asked cautiously. "You guys hungry?" I asked, reaching into my car and pulling out one of the massive, grease-spotted paper bags. I opened it, and the heavy, mouth-watering aroma of freshly fried chicken, buttered brioche buns, and seasoned waffle fries billowed out into the hot air. "My car just broke down, and the restaurant accidentally gave me way too much food. I can't eat all this. You want some spicy premium chicken sandwiches? No pickles." The teenager's eyes went wide. To a hungry skater, a free premium chicken combo is basically winning the lottery. "Bro, are you serious?" "Hell yeah, thank you." I walked over to the concrete wall. The Karen lunged forward, grabbing my forearm with her acrylic nails digging into my skin. "Don't you dare give them my food," she hissed, her eyes wide with a manic desperation. I casually peeled her hand off my arm like I was removing a piece of lint. "Do not touch me," I warned, my tone dropping an octave. "It is my food." I leaned over the wall and started passing out the foil-wrapped sandwiches. I handed over the perfectly salted fries. I even passed over the heavily guarded, precisely iced sweet tea. The teenagers immediately tore into the food, standing practically on top of the retaining wall, loudly groaning in appreciation as they took massive bites of the spicy chicken. "Oh my god, this is so good," one of the kids mumbled through a mouthful of brioche and chicken, completely ignoring the woman practically vibrating with rage 2 feet away. "Enjoy it, guys," I said, smiling warmly. I turned back to the Karen, leaning my hips against the fender of my car. I crossed my arms over my chest. "Well, now neither of us has your lunch." The woman let out a sound that I can only describe as the noise a tea kettle makes right before it completely boils dry. It was a high-pitched, guttural screech of absolute, unhinged fury. She turned around and stormed back to her white SUV. I thought, for a fleeting second, she was going to ram my car. Instead, she threw herself into the driver's seat and laid heavily on her horn. A continuous, blaring honk echoed deafeningly through the concrete tunnel. But here is the beautiful, inescapable reality of her situation. She couldn't back up. Behind her, the line of cars had continuously moved forward, completely filling the gap. There were now 15 cars trapped in the chute behind my stalled vehicle. When she laid on her horn, the driver behind her, a massive guy in a utility work truck, truck who had been baking in the sun for 20 minutes, laid on his horn in response. Then the minivan behind him honked. Within 30 seconds, the entire concrete trench had erupted into a chaotic, deafening symphony of blaring car horns and shouting drivers. The noise was physically oppressive, bouncing off the brick and concrete, amplifying the miserable heat of the afternoon. Through it all, I remained leaning against my car, casually eating my own fries one by one, watching the teenagers demolish the $60 feast. The chaos finally breached the heavy metal doors of the restaurant. The side door flew open, and Dave, the general manager, came sprinting out into the exhaust-choked trench. Dave was a heavy-set guy in his late 40s, and he looked incredibly stressed. "What is going on out here?" Dave yelled, trying to make his voice heard over the endless cacophony of horns. "Why isn't anyone moving?" The woman in the white SUV practically fell out of her vehicle, sprinting toward Dave. She was pointing frantically at me, tears of pure rage streaking her expensive foundation. "This absolute lunatic stole my food," she screamed, aggressively poking Dave in the shoulder. "He stole $60 worth of my food, he gave it to those delinquent street rats, and now he's illegally blocking the drive-thru. I want him arrested. I want him banned from this establishment." Dave looked at me. He recognized me immediately. "I come in every Tuesday and Saturday." "Sebastian?" Dave asked, utterly bewildered. "What's happening?" I pushed myself off the fender, maintaining my calm, distressed persona. "Dave, I am so sorry about this mess. My engine just completely stalled out as I was leaving the window. I think it's the alternator. I popped the hood to let it cool down before I try cranking it again. As for the food," I reached into my pocket and produced the receipts one last time, handing them to Dave. "I paid for my order, and I decided to pay for this lady's order behind me as a random act of kindness. The cashier, Marcus, rang it all up. Legally, I purchased it all. Since my car broke down and I was stuck here, I decided to share the extra food I bought with these nice kids walking by." Dave examined the receipts, the timestamps, the total amounts, the exact order numbers. As the manager, Dave had also been standing in the office 10 minutes ago. He had a direct, high-definition view of the exterior security cameras. He had watched the white SUV violently force its way into the zipper merge, nearly ripping the bumper off my car. He knew exactly what was happening. Dave slowly handed the receipts back to me. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth before he forced it down into a mask of professional customer service. He turned to the frantic woman. "Ma'am," Dave said loudly, speaking over the honking. "He holds the receipt. He purchased the food. Therefore, no theft has occurred. Furthermore, his vehicle is currently disabled in our lane. It is a mechanical failure, not an illegal blockade." "Then make him move it," she shrieked, her voice cracking violently, "or I will push it out of the way with my car. If you purposefully ram his vehicle on our private property, I will personally provide the police with the security footage of the incident," Dave warned, his tone suddenly very firm, dropping the customer service voice entirely. "You are completely boxed in. You cannot reverse because there are 15 cars behind you. You cannot go forward because his disabled vehicle is blocking the exit path. You will simply have to wait in your car until a professional tow truck arrives to clear the lane." The realization of her doom finally crashed down upon her. She was trapped. She was stuck in a sweltering concrete trench, surrounded by the deafening noise of furious drivers, with no food, no escape, and no authority figure willing to take her side. Her mental dam completely broke. She let out a primal scream, reached down, ripped off one of her expensive, designer high heels, and violently hurled it at the side of the restaurant. The heavy heel cracked loudly against the brick wall, missing Dave's head by mere inches. "I will sue every single one of you," she roared, ripping off her other shoe and throwing it directly at the drive-thru pickup window. It bounced harmlessly off the reinforced glass. Dave sighed heavily, reaching to his belt and pulling off his walkie-talkie. "Yeah, Marcus? Go ahead and call the police. We have a hostile customer destroying property in the drive-thru lane." For 25 agonizing minutes, the woman was trapped in the tunnel. She paced back and forth in her bare feet on the greasy, hot asphalt, muttering to herself like a completely broken woman. The teenagers had finished their free meal and skated off, waving cheerfully at me as they left. The drivers behind her eventually turned off their engines, realizing they were stuck, occasionally shouting colorful insults out their windows at her for holding up the line. Eventually, the flashing red and blue lights of a local police cruiser washed over the brick walls of the restaurant. Two officers approached the scene on foot, carefully squeezing past the line of parked cars. Dave met them halfway, briefly explaining the situation and pointing to the security cameras. The officers approached the woman, who instantly launched into a frantic, tear-filled narrative about how she was the victim of a massive, coordinated conspiracy intimacy between me and the fast food management. The officers calmly asked her to step back, noted the thrown shoes, and asked for her identification. While she was distracted arguing with the police officers, aggressively gesturing toward my car, I casually walked around to the driver's side of my sedan. I reached in, put the key in the ignition, and gave it a turn. The engine roared to life instantly, purring perfectly. I slammed the hood shut with a heavy clatter. Both the police officers and the woman whipped their heads around to look at me. "Wow!" I called out cheerfully, throwing my hands up in the air in mock disbelief. "Would you look at that? The engine must have just needed a few minutes to cool down. It's a complete miracle." I slid into the driver's seat, put the car in drive, and slowly rolled forward out of the concrete trench, finally freeing the massive backlog of trapped vehicles. As I pulled out into the main roadway, I glanced one last time in my rearview mirror. The woman was being actively detained by the officers, presumably being cited for disturbing the peace and property damage, while Dave the manager stood safely by the door, arms crossed, watching her downfall. I drove home with my AC blasting, eating my perfectly hot, legally obtained chicken combo, entirely satisfied by the absolute perfection of the drive-thru clog. Am I the monster here for maliciously weaponizing the retail payment system against her, or did she get exactly what she deserved for completely disregarding the sacred rules of the zipper merge?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.